Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Web Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we are now into day 14 of the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, and it seems like the pattern that's been set is fairly clear. The U.S. and Israel obviously enjoy much greater firepower than Iran has, and they're deploying this firepower. And clearly, destroying some of not even some, but quite a substantial amount of Iran's um, uh, missiles, launchers, and military capability. But Iran is not fighting that war. Iran is fighting asymmetrically, and Iran is using to its advantage the what it has, namely that it can continue to raise the costs for the United States, for Israel, and for the global economy, the continuance of the war. And uh, as long as it doesn't collapse, and that doesn't look like that's on the cards, it's putting the United States in a very difficult position because while Trump and Heck said, we've done this, we've done that, we've won, we've destroyed this. There's nothing left. Nothing left to bomb, no one left to
Yeah,
kill.
it's not target rich, as they say anymore.
Right, exactly. Well, but they can do that. However, if you're not able to bring this to any kind of a conclusion, then you essentially have lost the war, because there's no obligation at all on Iran's part to surrender. And we know that Trump has demanded unconditional surrender. And if Iran does not surrender, then essentially the United States is in a very difficult position because while it can, no doubt, if everything, all of Iran's military capabilities have been destroyed, yes, you can just go bomb. It becomes a turkey shoot. It's very unlikely that the United States would tolerate for very long just simply a turkey shoot through Iran. And uh, if Iran does not surrender, then the United States also cannot, declare victory and go home. This is the sort of the idea that's being put about by the so-called realists. Oh, declare victory and go home. That's not going to fly. First of all, the Israel lobby isn't going to allow that. We know that
They
that
will
that
veto. Iran will
that will
veto.
veto, but also Iran isn't going to allow it because Iran isn't just going to say, okay, well, fine, that's the end of that. Because if if that were to bring it to an end, then what's to stop the United States and Israel for relaunching this war in a few months' time? We've got nothing, and they would do it, in probably even less than 6 months. So it's the United States is in a very tight spot.
Yep. And who has escalation dominance? It's Iran that has it because there's the escalation ladder in this case is desalination centers and oil production. And so you first. Okay, you want to go up the escalation ladder? We can follow you up there. Okay. And, you know, because you live in Europe, I don't know how much Europeans think about water. I live in Russia, one of the great hydropowers of the world. I mean, you don't even have to pay for cold water. I mean, we're not water conscious. In the Middle East, you're very water conscious. Okay. Have you ever tasted desalinated water?
Desalinated water? No, I don't think so.
You don't want to. You can, and it's okay, but it's a different type of water, okay?
Right.
And people drink it because there's no other alternative, or you import it, and it's water's heavy, okay?
Right.
The Israelis went up the ladder, hit that oil. I don't know if it was a refinery, if it was storage, but a petroleum-rich target, and then they had essentially black acid rain. Okay, it was one of the greatest eco-terrorist attacks in history. It's right along with the North Stream there,
Right.
and so and there's word that the Americans are telling me is don't go there, don't do that. Okay, but we're going to go there.
Right.
We will
But
go there.
But that's,
because
yeah, go
because
ahead.
that's the ethos of the Israelis. I mean, they want the United States to, you know, you're far from finished. It doesn't look like Gaza yet, okay? And look at Gaza, and Hamas is still there, okay? So this is a huge dilemma. I mean, the initial lessons 2 weeks into this here is that Iran does has a escalation dominance, and it can, and as we said the last time we spoke. I mean, the Iranians can inflict enormous amount of pain because they can absorb pain. Okay, and so this is a ticket to. Well, personally, I think it's already a disaster. Declare victory and leave. How do you do that? Okay, I mean, I don't see how that is being done.
No,
Israel. I mean, look at Haifa. We thought about this last time. It doesn't have a functioning port right now, okay? And from what we're told, we have to, this is one of the foggiest conflicts I've ever seen. Iran hasn't pulled out its big guns, as it were, yet. I don't know. There's a lot of hype around that. I don't know. I don't know. And I think a lot of people that are smart about this are saying, well, it's widely believed, okay.
right. No, I think that's right. But I think one has to differentiate Israel's goals from the goals of the
I
United
agree.
States.
I
For
agree.
Israel, I think this war is a huge success. So they got everything that they wanted, namely this a prolonged U.S. engagement in the Middle East, a
And
prolonged
keep it
U.S.
going.
Yeah,
Keep it going.
exactly to keep it. So Israel's interest is, yeah, let's keep it going. Israel was not very happy when basically Bush declared victory, but then continued, but nonetheless continued in a much diminished way. This is ideal for Israel. This is what Israel has always wanted. And the ultimate prize for Israel is not only regime change, but the dissolution, disintegration of the country of Iran as a whole. I mean, that's,
Well, I think
a
maybe
perfect goal.
if I could maybe tweak what you just said. So far, this is an overwhelming success for Israel so far, okay? Because one of the things that I find it's not talked enough about. Okay, the Americans have abandoned their allies in the region, the Gulf states, these brand monarchies and all of that. Israel wants this as well. Because what they want, they want to be the regional hegemon. They don't want the Americans there. They want to be the boss. They want it balkanized or completely dissolved Iran. They don't want these American. I mean, if you're going to have a balkanized and dissolved Iran, you don't need American presence there, okay? And the Americans are always kind of a fly in the ointment because they have all of these bases and these assets, and they want to kiss and cuddle with these monarchies because there's all this kind of money going on, all the while you have all these machinations with the Qataris and the UAE, and the Israelis want to cut that completely out. So the American bases are damaged, if not destroyed. We don't know. That's an Israeli goal. They want the Americans out of the Gulf. They want to be the hegemon. And the United States is helping them
Well,
doing that at this
they
point.
the one problem with that, I mean, I agree with that. Israel has always been very unhappy, particularly with the long-standing U.S. relationship with Saudi Arabia going back to the 1930s, because all these years the United States has felt obligated to keep Saudis happy. And therefore, in order to keep the Saudis happy, they have had to apply pressure against Israel when you need to make some concessions on the Palestinian issue. And, Israel doesn't want to make any concessions on the Palestinian issue. And so when the United States starts talking about the Abraham Accords and the Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, well, Saudi Arabia, I think, would if there was a real move towards a two-state solution. But Israel has no intention of moving to a two-state solution. So therefore, this U.S. goal, Saudis joining the Abraham Accords, is obviously not something that Israel particularly
No,
favors because
Israel.
that's the price Saudi Arabia would demand for joining the Abraham Accords.
You're absolutely right. And the as intricate and delicate all these Abraham the Israelis are completely again they don't want to negotiate recognition with their Arab neighbors. They want to enforce it upon
Right.
their they don't want to negotiate with these people. There's a great story about how Saudi Arabia plays a special role. Um, King Faisal, during the war, Roosevelt met the Saudi monarch, and we all know that FDR was a ferocious. He was a chain smoker. He just chain smoking. But when the Saudi leaders showed up, no smoking. And it was like a 2 hour meeting. And afterwards, FDR did, give me a smoke, okay? Because and that's how much they
Yeah.
valued it. I mean, they don't want to, you can't smoke around them, okay? I don't know if, I think maybe for religious reasons, I don't know. But yes, it's very special. No, but the Israelis want that over. They don't
Right.
want, they don't coddle these people.
Right. No,
You
no,
dominate these
that's right.
people, okay?
That's right. And of course that's Saudi Arabia, but the rise of these Gulf states, which is relatively recent, because
Yes.
no one paid any attention to UAE, Qatar, Oman, just a couple of decades ago. No one paid any attention to them, but now they become a very big deal. For international finance and international shipping and everything else. And they also, whatever the rulers don't matter, but the people living there, they don't like Israel, and so so therefore the rulers at least have to, in some way, pay attention to the feelings of the people on the street. However much these monarchs, they only care about money and finance and tourism and whatever. They still have to do something in order to keep the populace happy. And
And
Israel is a real
and
problem.
and many cases the populace is foreign, like
Right,
from Asia and places like that. I mean, these people that this is a form of cheap labor for these monarchs, and these people don't owe them anything.
right,
Okay, as a matter of fact, in many cases we know that they're very poorly treated. And then you have Bahrain, which is an extreme example where it's a Shia country ruled by Sunnis under the thumb of the Saudis.
right.
And again, when I say I've seen the pictures, I've seen the videos, it's, I have the impression that the ruling family in Bahrain is very unpopular because of the protests that they're
Okay,
experiencing in the country right now.
right.
So, initially, you and I have talked about this before. We may be experiencing Stalingrad, but a lot happened after Stalingrad, everybody, okay? And the Battle of Stalingrad, no one said the war is won,
No,
okay?
no,
So
I think that's right. But the I think the interesting thing there, what you just said, was because very important, but the United States' bases in the Gulf, which is that Israel, however, isn't strong enough to exert its will without the United States. So it's all very well saying, "Oh, we'd like the United States to go," but Israel can't do much without the United States. Now, even if Iran is taken out of the picture, there's still Turkey, and Israel is now openly talking about taking on Turkey. Now, how does Israel take on
just
a country 10 times its size without the United States?
listen to what you're saying, George. Now it's Turkey,
Right.
NATO member, okay? Oh my goodness. I mentioned this a few months ago, just in passing. That Turkey is next. Now we hear it more and more often. This is a proposition to our viewers here. So the United States is going to destroy NATO for Israel. That's the next step
Right.
up the ladder here. That's quite amazing.
That's right.
Quite
And
amazing.
they talk about this, and they say, well, we're going to deal with Turkey. Well, you're not going to deal with anyone. You're going to get the United States to deal with Turkey. Now, I don't think the United States will do that, but because Turkey is still not just a member of NATO, it's it's a prime real estate. You
And
know,
it has a
controlling
real
the
military.
Dardanelles, that's a key piece of geopolitics there. So, it matters who controls the Dardanelles.
Well, and Turkey has a real military.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, serious. Okay, but before the advent of the special military operation, it was Turkey that had the largest indigenous, because the Americans are not indigenous to the European continent, and they're watching very closely what's going on, and they don't want to be, Erdogan always wants to be at the table. He doesn't want to be on the menu. Okay, I
Correct.
wonder how. Yeah, maybe this will be a conversation for another time. But how do you think the Russians look at this? This would be
Well,
very
that's a
interesting.
very interesting question, and I want to get to that in a minute because, of course, this very much affects the energy market because that's where Russia is directly affected. But I just want to look first of all at some of the tweets because today we had a news conference by Pete Hegseth, who never inspires confidence. Whenever you see him, he just don't. He's not. He just doesn't have. I mean, there've been kind of buffoonish defense secretaries in the past, but generally they didn't inspire at least a certain solidity.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
doesn't. He looks a complete lightweight. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
at the moment he starts speaking.
you can watch George C. Scott's imitation of George Patton, and you can watch it 1,000 times, Pete, and it doesn't work with you.
It doesn't work.
What is it? What did the Rumsfeld say once? He said, My mojo is working, but not with you." Okay, it's not working with it. It's not working. Okay, I mean, he should be dismissed.
Right,
Okay,
right, yes,
he
yes.
really needs to be dismissed.
Well, no, that's right. And of course, it was always peculiar. Trump's appointment of Hegseth was real only qualifications was he was a TV personality, but that's what Trump did. Trump is very preoccupied with television. He loves television. He obsesses with television, and he hired I don't know just about everybody who was at Fox News. I think if you didn't get hired and you worked at Fox
Well,
News, there's obviously something wrong with you.
Tammy Bruce was there, Pete Hegseth,
It's a whole litany. I mean,
what it's the Leo Trinet,
Leo, what's his name? Yes, Leo Tyrrell. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
Terrell,
But yeah, but more than that, because
Harmy Dillon.
and then there was the transportation secretary, I forgot his name. Whoever is the secretary of transportation.
Oh yeah, the
Nonsense.
guy with the kind of
Yeah, that
ash and tear. Yeah, I
that's
know.
it. Yeah, that's it. There,
Oh,
yeah,
Duffy.
that's the one. That's it. That's it. Like he was another one. So
No,
there's
because George just mentioned their titles, but I see in my mind's eye, I see them on TV.
yeah, that's right.
And his wife. I wonder if his wife has a job there. Okay.
That's right. And then there's the woman who the also
Oh, Janine,
oh
Judge
yeah,
Janine.
she's another one. And then there's the one who used to work for Nixon and then she went worked for Fox News, the blonde woman. I mean, you know her. I can't remember her name, but she worked for Nixon and then just simply became this expert on. She's the one who was appointed to the Treasury assistant to the Treasury Secretary in the first term. Then it turned out that her doctoral dissertation was all plagiarized, and so she had to withdraw her nomination. So that, but she's also has a job in the administration. Yeah, so this is
Okay, everybody, those are the ones we just remembered, not
that's
all
what
of
we
them.
remember. But it's a very long list. I know. I once saw that list. It's a very long list of Fox News personalities who Trump hired. So they got Hegseth. Anyway, Hegseth today declared, of course, everything is going fantastically well, and then they declared that the young Khamenei, who's the new chief Ayatollah, that he doubts whether he probably thinks he's alive, but nonetheless that he is maybe seriously injured, which he may be, because he issued a statement yesterday but which was read out on Iranian TV, but nonetheless, it wasn't him reading it out and wasn't his voice or anything. However, it may be true that he was seriously injured in the attack, but we don't know. I would think that any leader of Iran would be very careful about making any public
You think?
appearances at
You,
all.
you
See
think?
that Israel has openly said we're going to kill him,
Yeah.
and Mark Levin, tweets out every day, kill Khamenei. So I would think
All inspired by the New Testament, I suppose. I don't know.
yes, yeah. So therefore, it's maybe he was. I mean, it's possible he was seriously injured during the attack, or is maybe taking precautions. But either way, uh, Hexa says something like, "Oh, the entire Iranian leadership is hidden like rats." Well, they're not all hidden. For instance, there was a big demonstration yesterday, and some senior government figures took part in this big demonstration in Tehran, including Larijani, which I think I have to say that's quite brave, to walk, there in public, given there's absolutely a price on your head. I mean, he was walking there, and so therefore, using this kind of language, referring to people as rats. I mean, I don't think it doesn't seem very dignified. Shall we
Yeah,
say?
and Trump used the word scumbags.
Right? Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. That's it.
Lunatics and scumbag. It's not,
Right.
it's, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, he was just could look at this um the truth that uh, that Trump sent out. And here, this is some of the things. If Iran does anything that stops the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States 20 times harder than they've been hit thus far. These kinds of threats are totally pointless. I mean, you've already hit Iran with what you've got. So when you say, oh, it's going to be 20 times harder, I mean, that just doesn't have any resonance.
Yeah, well, bounce the rubble. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Exactly. Additionally, we will take out easily destroyable targets that will make it virtually impossible for Iran to be ever built back as a nation again. When you issue these kinds of threat, you're kind of pretty much making uh, committing war crimes. I mean, when you start, I mean, according to the rules of war, you're only supposed to hit military targets. You can't start issuing threats, which there's clear implication there that you're going to be hitting civilian targets. And of course, they have hit civilian targets very extensively.
Well, when people mention the laws of war, it seems maybe too what's important, why do we have the laws of war? They don't really necessarily have to be written down, but over time, you kill civilians and your civilians can get killed. So, maybe
Right.
there's that. That's
That
when,
was
rules of war, there's kind of an understanding
right. Right.
that, because if we do it, they could do it.
Right.
Okay. So maybe we won't do it.
No, I
Okay.
think that
I
that,
mean,
that that's
it goes back to like, the use of poison gas during the First World War. I mean, both sides on the Western Front used it, but it wasn't used again. Why? Because there was this understanding that it's
right.
not a good idea to do that. Okay.
That's very true. But of course, what happens. I mean, the issue of not hitting civilian targets. That was in the Hague Conventions. But nonetheless, in World War II, both sides targeted civilians. Absolutely, both targeted civilians. Without any real pretense that they were going after military targets, or just boom, hitting cities in the hope of killing as many civilians as possible. So totally in violation of the very principles that were enunciated during the Hague Conventions and then in the Geneva Conventions. So you're right. The idea behind it was precisely that. Well, if we do it to them, they're going to do it to us.
Yeah,
And
but
that's why they're the prisoners of war, like the protection of the prisoners of war. If we execute their prisoners of war, they're going to execute, our prisoners of war. So, yeah, go on.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, and it should be learned because it's out there. When the United States in the spring, in summer of 1945, they started the firebombing of
Right,
Tokyo, which killed far more people than in Nagasaki and
right,
Hiroshima combined.
right,
Okay. But the reason why I bring it up and why Donald Trump should be a little bit more sober about this here is that Iran has the capacity
right,
to to destroy to attack civilians.
right,
Okay,
right,
they have the capacity. We have this. It's an asymmetrical attrition. The both sides have their advantages. George has already talked about it already. Yeah, the United States at some point will be able to just kind of carpet bomb Iran. It's a big place. It's a big place to carpet bomb. But will that make null and void Iran's ability to defend itself? No, at least so far.
right.
Okay.
No, that's
So
right.
that's the reason why I brought it up is that maybe you shouldn't be doing this because Tel Aviv is a very highly populated city. The same thing can happen to them.
No, no,
And
that's right.
what we're seeing so far, from what we can see here, it's the Israelis and the Americans that are going up the escalation ladder, and the Iranians are saying we can meet you. Okay,
Right,
so maybe stop doing the killing of civilians on purpose,
right.
and maybe the Iranians will take the cue. I tend to think they would. Okay, but this is
Right, no,
where we are.
I think so, but yeah, absolutely. Where I think Iranians won't take the cue is if Trump puts out a word to them, hey, let's just bring this to an end. We
No,
stop
no, no, no.
shooting and you stop
Sorry.
shooting. That I think
No,
won't work.
no, we're past that. We're way. See, the I had a fascinating conversation with Alistair Crook yesterday, and it's obvious that one thing we all can count on, who's going to win, who's going to lose, it depends on how you use
Right.
those words, okay? But there's one thing for sure. Iran is not going to go back to the status quo ante.
There's no, there's
You
absolutely
can
no,
take that to the bank.
no, exactly. There's no incentive for them, absolutely, to do that. Um, and so anyway, he says, but a death, for Iran to be built back as a nation again. So that clearly, you're talking about hitting civilian targets. Death, fire, and fury will rain upon them. But I hope and pray that it does not happen. This is a gift from the United States of America to China and all of those nations that heavily use the Hormuz Strait. Hopefully, it is a gesture that will be greatly appreciated. And thank you for your attention to this
Well,
matter.
so Donald Trump is make China great again here, and this is all over the map.
Right, but the interesting thing is he doesn't really have a plan to open the Strait of Hormuz. They don't know how to do it. I mean, this
There
basically
isn't
that's
one.
a huge endeavor.
There isn't one.
There
Yeah,
isn't one.
unless you want to commit at least
That's right.
tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of troops.
No, that's
Go,
right. That's right.
make my day. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's right. Um, and if Iran has put out any mines in the Hormuz Strait, and we have no reports of them doing so, we want them removed immediately, if for any reason. Now, it's still unclear. I have to say, it's unclear whether Iran has or has not mined the Hormuz Strait. I mean, there are conflicting reports, so I would be hesitate
There,
before
there,
they say.
there doesn't seem to be any reason for them to do it.
That's what I think. I don't see any reason because it's effectively been closed. I mean, if you've effectively closed it without mining it, then what's the point of mining it? And Iran is able to get its ships through. It's basically they're blocking every other ship except Iranian ships. So I don't see any purpose at all in putting down any mines.
Well, you did hear, George, that the Indians, which have played their, I don't know, I think we need to get an India expert in here. I can't understand what they're doing here, but they got on their knees. Please, can you let our No, sorry, you chose the wrong side.
Right, right, right.
Okay.
If for any reason mines were placed and they are not removed forthwith, the military consequences to Iran will be at a level never seen before. It's again, it's
Aren't
the
you
same.
getting, aren't, aren't you getting a little tired of never seen before?
If, on the
It's
other
like
hand,
that's like on speed dial with him.
yeah, that's right. If, on the other hand, they remove what may have been placed, it will be a giant step in the right direction.
For whom?
Yes, that's right.
Towards what end?
Well, exactly, step in the right direction. It's when he says things like that, you get the sense he wants out. I really do think he wants out, but he has no idea how to get out now. Which
He can't. Everybody,
anyone
he
could have
can't.
predicted you're going to have real difficulties getting out of this.
He can't get out.
Right,
He closed the door behind him when this started. You
right.
can't
That's right.
because
Additionally, yeah,
Iran has a veto and Israel certainly has a
that's
veto.
right. That's
So,
right.
if this is a democracy, Mr. Trump, you lost 2 against 1.
Additionally, we are using the same technology and missile capabilities deployed against drug traffickers to permanently eliminate any boat or ship attempting to mine the Hormuz Strait.
I have
What
no idea what he's
are those?
talking.
I have no idea. Well, those fishing boats that they blow
Yeah.
up in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Anyway, then it says, we are totally destroying the terrorist regime of Iran, militarily and economically and otherwise. Yet, if you read the failing New York Times, you would incorrectly think that we are not winning. Iran's navy is gone. See, the point is he's completely missing the point. No one is saying you're obviously militarily stronger than Iran. The question is whether you can actually achieve any of your goals through what you're doing. So, oh, we are winning. We've destroyed this and that. Yeah, you can do that. You have much greater firepower, but that doesn't mean you're getting anywhere close to your goal. Iran's navy is gone. Their air force is no longer. Missiles, drones, and everything else are being decimated, and their leaders have been wiped from the face of the earth.
Then why are American military bases in the region still being attacked? Why is Israel
Right.
still being attacked?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and meanwhile, Hezbollah's back in action.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you
Yeah.
have the Houthis waiting
The
in the
Houthis,
Balkan, waiting to be called in.
that's right. Yeah. We have unparalleled firepower, unlimited ammunition, and plenty of time. Watch what happens.
None of those are true. None of those three
Yeah,
points are true.
watch what happens to these deranged scumbags today.
That's helpful. That's real helpful.
Deranged scumbag. They've been killing innocent people all over the world for 47 years, and now I, as the 47th president of the United States of America, am killing them.
Oh, wow.
This is all of this is very strange. I mean, Max Blumenthal has written that somehow Trump was persuaded, on the basis of no evidence at all, that Iran was behind the assassination attempts on him in 2024. No evidence whatsoever, but apparently he seemed to have been persuaded that Iran was behind this. Um, you know, when we start talking about this 47 years, it's the balance is very much in favor of the United States. The United States has inflicted far more death and destruction and misery on Iranians over the 47 years than vice versa. I don't know what Americans Iran killed. I don't know how you count them. Are they counting those who were killed in Iraq during those years? Well, I mean, they invaded Iraq. I mean, that's a that's a dangerous proposition, going off thousands of miles and invading a country. Yeah, you're putting your life in your hands.
Well, he was 45th president of the United States. Why didn't he do it then?
Right. Yes, that's
Okay. This 47-year thing, I mean, this is just, it's like dealing with a child.
right.
Did you do it? You come up with the first 5 reasons and then,
Right.
no, I did it. Yes, I did do it because you've been doing this to me for the 5 years
Right.
of my
Right. Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's just like, wow. I mean, it's the least sophisticated excuse I've ever come
It really
across.
is. It really is. I mean, bringing up the seizure of the U.S. embassy. I mean, you know, the number of people who are alive who can remember that
Yeah, exactly.
keeps diminishing by the year.
Yeah,
So
well, and you know what? Yeah, George is right. It diminishes with every passing year. But over the last, let's just say, 15 years, we can take whatever you want. the names of Iranian nuclear scientists, they're
Right.
remembered.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Okay,
right. Yeah.
they're remembered. They're remembered as martyrs. Okay, the people of Iran know their names.
Right.
Okay, for George and I were alive during the embassy crisis. Okay, and George, I don't know, maybe you'll agree or disagree with me. I know the history of it very well. It's pretty much a blur now to me. Okay,
Right.
it's not something that, I critically think about
Right.
anymore. It's a node in a series of events. Okay, that's
Right.
how I remember it.
But the thing is that okay, that's 47 years ago. Since then, you have had one moderate, responsible leader after another. So you can talk about the students who seized the embassy, um, but the fact is that during this time there were these leaders, very reasonable leaders like Khatami, and all of the people who actually pushed for some kind of a workable deal with the United States, which in fact eventually led to the signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. So you've had one leader after another, but instead, particularly with what Trump did, and all the people around Trump, not just around Trump, but all the Ted Cruzes and all these nutcases in the Senate who were desperate to destroy the JCPOA, they guaranteed that those moderates were sidelined. I mean, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, these moderates look rather silly. You went
Well,
through this whole process of negotiating an agreement. Well, look what the Americans did with the agreement. They just
yeah,
tore it up.
the parallels with Russia are quite meaningful here. With the special military operation, what happened to Russian liberals? They're gone.
Right,
With this uh, um, war of aggression against Iran, I don't. We use this language. We should ask Professor Morandi next time we talk to him. Do they use the words moderate?
right,
Or I think he said principalists. There, that's
right,
one of the categories. Okay,
right.
we should use the lexicon that they do, but we'll just use the word moderate here. How are they doing, George?
Right, right. No, no,
Yeah.
that's right. Now, and again, because they talk about the Ayatollahs, but if we look at the Iran's foreign minister, I mean, he's not an Ayatollah. Iran's president, he's not Ayatollah. So these are all very reasonable people. They negotiate, very reasonable agreements. The JCPOA was a very reasonable agreement. Everything that was on the table last year before the attack on June and before the recent attack, these were all reasonable deals. And it was, who behaved unreasonably? Well, the United States. I mean, you look at, the people who speak on behalf of the United States, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, well, I don't see the parallels from Iran. I mean, the people who speak
Well,
Larijani or Arakchi, they sound a lot more reasonable than these people.
well, for our entire lives, these religious fanatics in
Right,
Tehran. Well, religion is invoked a lot recently, and it's coming from the West.
right. That's right. Um, Anyway, here he is. And this is very funny because this is when Trump addressing the issue of the oil, and he said, "Oh, this is fantastic. We're going to make a lot of money with the rising oil prices." Well, the oil majors make money. I doubt whether the people who had voted for you, they're going to be very happy suddenly paying 3 times as much for a gallon of gas as they did before.
Max Blumenthal's reporting today is that in some gas stations in California, it's $8 a gallon.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, the United States is the largest oil producer in the world by far. So when oil prices go up, we make a lot of money.
God, he doesn't have any understanding of basic
We
economics.
make a lot of
Well,
money. Hey, I thought you were the populist. I thought you were the guy, who was the friend of Joe Sixpack. He's not making a lot of money.
he can't afford a six pack.
Yes, exactly. But of far greater interest and importance to me as president is stopping an evil empire. Oh, that's nice. Iran from having nuclear weapons and destroying the Middle East and
Who's
indeed there were.
destroying the Middle East right
Who's
now?
destroying them? Exactly. But I have to say, Iran is an evil empire. That's a
Well, I
literally.
mean, what an empire of one country?
No, whom are they subjugating? Iran from nuclear weapons and destroying the Middle East, and indeed the world. I won't ever let that happen. Thank you for your
You
attention.
know, George, this is
Yeah,
just lunatic fringe
right.
stuff.
It is.
It's really
It's. Yeah,
scary. See, off ramp. You're going to need a lot of brain power and a lot of finesse to wiggle out of this. It's
it,
always possible. It's always possible. However,
well, it's always possible. There's no question that Iran would extract a price. I think
oh yeah,
Iran is going to ask for
yep.
at the very least with the United States a non-aggression treaty. Basically, some written commitment, no more of these wars. Israel, of course, won't sign a non-aggression treaty, but he does. They can deal with Israel, but not with the United States. So that's the minimum. And I think some kind of a sanctions relief. There,
Oh,
those
absolutely.
Iran isn't just going to accept, hey, well, we'll just call it a day. We want something. Sanctions relief and unfreezing of assets. That's, I think, the minimum that Iran is going to ask for.
Absolutely. And how about a demilitarized zone in the Persian Gulf?
No,
Okay. All right. I mean, yeah. And then we can work towards a Palestinian state. That won't be high on the list, but it will
right.
be there.
Right, that's right. Anyway, here is apparently Trump was speaking on the phone to the G7. This is again article in Axios. Trump claimed in G7 call, then Iran is about to surrender. The problem is that Trump makes lots and lots of claims, and I don't know whether people take anything he says terribly seriously. And that's been true throughout his career. I mean, that's what he does. He's a booster. So when he says Iran is about to surrender, I don't know if anyone's particularly persuaded. But anyway, here is President Trump told G7 leaders in a virtual meeting on Wednesday that Iran is about to surrender. And then it says 24 hours later, Iran's new supreme leader issued his first public statement. And then Trump is as confident about the war's outcome in private as he is in public. But his assessment is colliding with a more complex reality on the ground.
Well, isn't
And
that just generous? Isn't that just generous right there?
yes,
Yeah.
that's right. The Iranian regime.
Axios is a pro-Zionist
Yeah,
outfit,
that's right.
everybody. Okay.
That's right. That's very much right. But they seem to have very good um, connections in the White House, and obviously good connections in Tel Aviv. And then it says Trump boasted about the results of Operation Epic Fury on the G7 call Wednesday morning, telling allies, "I got rid of a cancer that was threatening us all." While claiming Iran was about to surrender, he also suggested there were no officials left alive in Tehran with the power to make that decision.
Who is it? God, who is advising him? God.
There were no officials left. Nobody knows who's leader, so there is no one that can announce surrender. Well, if that is the case, let's say this was true. That's probably the reason why it's never a good idea to start taking out the leaders of your adversaries.
You think? You think? Yeah, you
Because
think?
then you're not going to have anyone to sign an agreement with to bring a war to a conclusion. So the idea, oh, we took them out, and now we don't have anyone who can sign an agreement.
You know, before the First World War, at least in the West, it was again rules of war. You don't target the enemy's officers. You don't do that, okay? Because the officers keep the men in control, okay? And and if one side wants to, some private comes up and saying, "I'm surrendering on the behalf of the French." No, you need somebody of stature, of legitimacy. That's why you don't do this.
Right. No, that's right. And I think that was, I mean, they did, there was a bit of that in the war, particularly in the Far East, when they took out kind of Japanese officers and they took out Japanese communications. And of course, the soldiers, without any officers commanding them, then went ahead and committed war crimes. But
Right.
that's what they do. And then the Americans tried to put those officers, held them responsible, even though they weren't in any position to guide the men because you essentially destroyed all the means of communication. But they still want to say, oh, no, it was your fault that they committed war crimes. No, if you remove officers, especially the general staff, the men will just go crazy and start committing war crimes. Um, anyway, Trump has mocked Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, as a lightweight. And then previously telling Axios that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's son would be unacceptable to the
Well,
U.S.
again, I mean, it's not difficult to find the biography of the new supreme leader. He's anything but a lightweight,
Yes,
everyone. And this is easily found in Western media. Okay, and this is not doing a deep dive.
right. That's right. That's right. Anyway, so that's the call took place amid grave concern among G7 leaders over the war's growing economic fallout. And all of the other leaders urged Trump to end the war quickly, stressing that the Strait of Hormuz must be secured as soon as possible. Trump said the Hormuz situation is improving and that commercial ships should resume operations in the area. At least 2 tankers were set ablaze off the coast of Iran.
Interesting way to end that.
That's right. Now, this is where it becomes quite interesting because um, the now, yes, that as the United States has lifted as
Oh, here we go. Yeah,
yes, exactly.
here's the karma move. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. So this is yeah. So that yes, there's yeah, because because of the exorbitant oil prices, it's they basically can't get it down below $100 a barrel. Trump can say, "Hey, we're about to win," and then the oil price goes down down to $90 a barrel, but then quickly climbs back up again because no one is terribly persuaded by Trump's
Yeah,
assurance it's all coming to an end.
but George, you can't play that trick again.
No, you absolutely can't. And but anyway, yesterday, Scott Bessent announced that he's partially lifting the sanctions on Russian oil. So it says POTUS is taking decisive steps to promote stability in global energy markets and working to keep prices low as we address the threat and instability posed by the terrorist Iranian regime. Um, the threat and instability, I mean, who's doing the instability? Anyway, to increase the global reach of existing supply, the Treasury Department is providing a temporary authorization to permit countries to purchase Russian oil currently stranded at sea. So they'd already done something like this last week with Indian purchases of Russian oil, but now it's more general. Temporary authorization to permit countries to purchase Russian oil currently stranded at sea. This narrowly tailored short-term measure applies only to oil already in transit and will not provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government, which derives the majority of its energy revenue from taxes assessed at point of extraction.
But see, well, there's a fundamental misunderstanding here. Number one, there's no shortage of oil. Okay, what was unfortunately what is in great supply is political risk,
Right.
and oil markets are adverse to that.
Right.
Okay, and so so maybe it's possible could be some oil out there afloat that we can get. The oil markets don't work that way. They work on certainty.
Right.
And that's not going to lower the price here just
Right.
because he says that. That's not how oil markets work.
Right. Right. No, no, that's right. And then President Trump's pro-energy policy have driven oil and gas, anyway, so blah, blah. And here's then the Washington Post story. Trump administration allows for Russian oil sales as energy prices soar.
And George, if just as an aside here, I don't know, you probably saw it on Twitter too, but I just couldn't. hide my extreme pleasure about all these people. What about Ukraine? What
That's it. I
about?
want to come to that. The
Okay, I'm
Ukraine,
sorry.
exactly. The Ukraine angle. That's exactly. So anyway, the move is likely to be a boon for Russia as the United States tries to stem the economic because they were all, just a few weeks ago, we were sitting here and talking about all this. They were all so pleased with themselves. They were really going to squeeze the Russians now. EU says we're cutting ourselves from Russian oil by the end of next year, gas by the end of next year. Fantastic. And we're going to be seizing all these tankers in the high seas to prevent Russia from selling its oil. And they were so happy about this. Whoops, those plans seem to have been somewhat displaced. So here now they got to think, well, United States is lifting the sanctions. A general license issued by the Treasury Department allows Russia to begin selling some 128 million barrels of oil that are estimated to have already been loaded onto tankers previously facing restrictions from the United States. The license expires after 30 days. And then the lifting of the sanctions positions Putin as one of the biggest beneficiaries of President Donald Trump's war on Iran. Sanctions were imposed on Russian oil in response to the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, part of an effort by the US and European Union to pressure Russia to withdraw its forces and so on. And then another beneficiary could be Iran, experts say,
Yes,
because
because they're exporting more oil now
well,
with
that's
with.
right. But also exactly they own many of the tankers that made up the shadow fleet. So it's because its government and independent militias probably own many of the tankers that make up a shadow fleet of hundreds of vessels currently holding Russian oil. This fleet is designed specifically to evade sanctions. It is made up of older, less reliable vessels that sailed uninsured and use radar jamming devices and other techniques to avoid detection. And then here is Senator Jean Shaheen, one of these absolute nut Democrat senators, absolutely crazy about Russia. And she's going, as Putin helps Iran target Americans in the Middle East, POTUS is now filling the Kremlin's war coffers. Instead of squeezing Russia's faltering economy, the president's ill-planned war is giving Putin a windfall while American families face higher prices. But it's very important to keep in mind that this is true about her and about the Democrats. They're doing this kind of critique, very ineffectual critique of Trump's war. But they just want to they want the war against on Russia. They just say, we're just not interested in this. We want a war on Russia. Um, and although it may seem like this is a windfall for the Democrats, I don't actually think so. The Iraq War, in 2003, George W. Bush was reelected. The Democrats were not able to do anything with that war. They should have done. But 2004, George W. Bush was reelected. And I think largely because the Democrats got very cutesy and they said, well, the president hasn't laid out his plans. He hasn't told us what he intends to do. We want to know what the plans are. We want to know what the goals are. Well, if you're just getting cutesy and not really saying whether you're for it or against it, but you think you can just criticize the administration, no one's persuaded by it. And,
Well,
and, and that's why John Kerry lost.
we've talked about this before. Okay, they're going to be members of Trump's coalition that, on principle, are angry with him and the Republican Party for this unprovoked, unnecessary war. But they're not large in number, okay? We can get all emotional. We can go be like these psychopaths on Twitter.
Right.
But they're going to be far more of the Trump coalition to be angry about gasoline
Right,
prices
right.
and inflation. That's what's going to get their blood boiling.
Yep, yep.
I mean, George and I have been over this so many times. Okay, George is right. Bush got reelected. Okay, even after the illegal war against Iraq. the war is not front and center. It's like, how many people, and I think they should, be very angry because those 171 children were killed. I'm angry about it. George is angry about it.
Right,
We can
right,
have a
right,
whole program, and I can have, a month of programs about it of
right,
people that are really concerned about that, as they should be. But
right.
I'm sorry, most people go to say $8 a gallon.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't want to hear about anything else right now.
yeah, no, I think that's right. I think, look, you need to make a principled stance. I mean, I think people respect that. In politics, you take a principled stand. But the Democrats failed to do that over the Iraq War. They got cutesy. If only he spelled out the his goals. We want to know what the goals are. Well, we know what the goals are. I mean, why, Trump has told us what the goal is. Yeah, basically destroy Iran. That's the goal. I mean, so we want to know what the goal is. Is it about nuclear weapons? Is it about ballistic missiles? Is it about regime change? You don't need all this. But the same thing happened in 2004 when John Kerry, well, he was for the war before he was against it. And then there was that buffoon, Howard Dean, who said, well, I'd be for it if we got a permission slip from the UN Security Council. Well, that's a losing proposition. I mean,
That
Americans aren't going to
that
say,
just
well, oh, well, we need a permission slip from the UN Security Council.
no, no, this that does it's this
Right. Exactly.
with voting.
Yeah. That's right.
No.
Yeah. So what?
And look, you know, cynicism is part of this podcast. If the war had gone very well in Iraq, well, people would have cheered the president.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if,
Yeah.
if Trump, would get, at midnight tonight a telegram, "We surrender," then the war says, "Oh, fine, okay."
Right.
So I don't this moralizing, particularly from members of the political class, this
That's right.
joke senator,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
I
That's right.
mean, obviously, she's very invested in American empire because she's pro-Ukraine.
That's
Okay.
exactly. That's among the worst. Um, and then here is the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. The Senate Democratic leaders released joint statement on Trump administration weakening of sanctions on Russian oil.
I thought
Yeah.
this was about housing and urban affairs.
I don't know. I don't know why. Anyway, the president's decision is particularly galling in light of public reporting that Russia is assisting Iran in targeting Americans in the Middle East. Sadly, this is the inevitable outcome of President Trump pushing America into a conflict with no apparent strategy and no end game.
But but,
There was
but
this
it's
no apparent
okay.
strategy
It
and
was,
no end game.
but it was okay for Biden to do this when it came
Yeah,
to you.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Now is not the time to clear the way for sales of Russian oil majors and Russian-owned and shadow fleet vessels. I mean,
So,
certainly, I
so
mean,
we're coming up to we're going into the abyss of the Third World War, and this committee is worried about Russian oil
that's right. The
sales.
Russian oil,
Really?
exactly. Yes, that's right.
It's like arguing what the band on the Titanic should be playing.
That's right. The Trump administration issued a sweeping general license that eases sanctions against Russian oil companies and the shadow fleet. The move flies in the face of a requirement and so the countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act. Um, and so on. So this is we need to focus on Russia. So we don't want this loony war. We want another loony war. That's an even more dangerous loony war against Russia.
Exactly.
Um,
We're not
and
against war. We're not. We're
no,
just
no,
against.
no, we're not against loony wars either. We want to target Russia. He wants to target Iran. And there's a good friend, Chancellor Schmerz. Merz says U.S. decision to ease sanctions on Russia is wrong. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said a U.S. decision to ease Russian oil sanctions was wrong, as he warned over the Kremlin profiting from the war on Iran. Easing sanctions now for whatever reason would be wrong, Merz said on Friday. And then he said, Mertz added that while there was an oil price problem, there was no shortage. I would like to know what motives prompted the US government to make the decision. So, you know,
You don't have you don't have an entree to even ask that question. I mean, he assumes that he has some kind of standing in American politics, right? And he doesn't. Nobody cares.
no, no, nobody cares.
I'm sure there are many members of the Trump administration that they don't even know who the Chancellor of
No,
Germany
no,
is, and they don't
no,
care.
that's right. That's they absolutely don't know. And but what's really very interesting about this is how the Americans have kind of completely sidelined Europe. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, first of all, that the war in Ukraine broke off relations between Europe and Russia. This is a long-standing American goal. Europe played right into it. Essentially, they've cut themselves off from oil and gas from Russia, cheap, reliable energy from Russia. The United States managed to accomplish that. Now you got the Middle East. Um, who knows how that's going to fare out? So Europe isn't going to be getting any oil and gas from there. So where is Europe going to get its oil and gas from? Well, the United States. Um, they're going to charge a pretty penny. Don't expect any discounts from the Americans. They don't give any discounts. No one gets anything on the house from the United States. So Merz is going on about how that's his problem, the lifting sanctions on Russia, but he's not. He doesn't seem particularly concerned with where's Germany going to get its energy from. Um, and the overriding suggestion is when will this war end and what strategy will be used to bring it to an end? These questions have not really been answered. No. Merz has grown more critical of the US Israel military campaign against Iran after initially supporting it.
Yeah, well, I guess, the Europe is just, wobbly. They're just wobbly
they're,
on
they're,
everything.
they're,
Except Russia.
That's right.
Okay.
They're wobbly. But the one thing is so striking about them is they never seem to be worrying about what's good for Europeans, like what's good for Germans. Germans want to pay an arm and a leg for their energy. How,
Well,
you know,
yeah, I mean, the people like Mertz, he cares about the European Union. He doesn't give a rat's ass about Europeans.
no, no, exactly. Yeah. Um, Anyway, here is Politico. Also, Trump is wrong. Mertz slams U.S. decision to ease oil sanctions on Russia, and this continues. Um, we think it's wrong, Mertz said. There is currently a price problem, but not a supply problem. And in that regard, I would like to know what other factors led the U.S. government to make this decision.
No, it's not a price problem and it's not a supply problem. It's a political problem.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Um, And Mertz said the decision by the U.S. administration had come as a surprise on Friday morning.
Haven't you gotten used to it?
It takes,
You know what's going to happen, everybody. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. All right, now, let's have a sit down. Going back to the Sopranos here, let's have a sit down. Okay, we'll take $3-4 off the price, but I want Greenland wrapped,
yeah,
gift
yeah,
wrapped for me. Okay,
right.
something like it's. I tell you, everybody, Greenland's still on the agenda. It's not
Oh,
gone.
absolutely, I think Greenland's on the agenda. Also on the agenda is that if um, if this war continues, Trump is going to start pressuring the Europeans to join this war. He's going to say to them, "Hey, you're not going to sit on the sidelines for this. If you want us in NATO and if you want help on Ukraine, you got to join this." Now, all this sitting on the sidelines. Well, we're for it, but we're not exactly for it. We're worried whether it's in accord with international law. No, Trump's going, no, 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 no. You have to join. I mean, if there are eventually going to be plans for a ground invasion or seizing Karg Island or anything like that, the Europeans are going to be asked to join. They're not going to be allowed to sit on the sidelines. So
They're
that's
not going to be asked; they're going to be
that
told.
we're going to be told. So this thing about we're going to rely on the Americans to provide us with energy. No, the Americans are going to ask for a price, quite a steep price for
Well, and Mark Rutte is
discounted energy.
But Mark Rutte has said as much. This is NATO is in pursuit of American foreign policy interests. So pony up,
Right.
pony up.
That's right. And we want to ensure that Russia does not explain the war in Iran, does not exploit
Exploit.
the war in Iran to weaken Ukraine. Nor will we allow Moscow to test NATO on its eastern flank and up here in the north.
Well, we will not allow. You don't have a say in it. I'm sorry.
But
Oh,
I
the
just love the way
arrogance of these people.
I love the sort of surprise. Well, and it wasn't a surprise when they launched their attack. I mean, did they consult you? Did anyone call you? Hey, Fred, we're gonna be bombing in, in a couple of minutes. I don't think anyone bothered. I think they found out like everyone else did.
Fred, I know you're having your breakfast, so I apologize for that. Okay, we would like your opinion, and we're going to start a war of aggression without any threats towards us. We want to know where are you going to be with us? Or
Right,
we can do it the easy way, we can do it the
right,
hard way. Okay,
right.
and go back to your eggs. We don't want them to get cold. Okay.
That's right. And so Merz stressed that Germany, together with its G7 partners and Israel, was working to end the war. That's very interesting. What exactly is Merz doing to end the war? It's a
I didn't
little
know he
like
was at the table. Was he at the table? He's at the table, huh? Okay.
it kind of reminds me of, you remember when AOC at the Democratic Convention told us that Kamala Harris is working day and night, 24/7 to end the war in Gaza. I don't remember what it was that she was supposed to have been doing, but she was told she's working tirelessly to bring that war to an end. He also reiterated his fears that the US and Israel lack a strategy for ending the war. You know,
Wow, he's a real bright
he's a
bulb,
he's a
isn't he?
yeah, he's a true
He's a
thinker.
thinker. He's a real thinker.
I,
God,
I have to say, I didn't think that I would miss our friend Sergeant Schultz, but
yeah,
Schultz seems to be brighter than
yeah. That's what people when people had asked me about Bush Senior and Bush Junior, and I said Bush Junior made his father look like an intellectual.
no, that's right. In view of soaring energy prices, Merz pointed to the release of international oil reserves in recent days, including Germany, which he said will help to moderate energy prices to some extent. You can't keep releasing oil from the strategic oil reserves. I mean that's supposed to be for emergency only. You can't just keep releasing that's not going to affect prices. It temporarily, but then the prices will go up again. Antonio Costa, he's the president of the European Council, the top man in the EU. So he also weighed in on this issue of lifting sanctions. The unilateral decision by the US to lift sanctions on Russian oil exports is very concerning. I love the unilateral as opposed to multilateral. When has the US ever made multilateral decisions? It impacts European security. Increasing economic pressure on Russia is decisive for it to accept a serious negotiation for a just and lasting peace. Weakening sanctions increases Russian resources to wage the war of aggression against Ukraine. So they just basically, you can see that that's their one thing. That's their one preoccupation, Ukraine. I mean, so that's all they care about. And in other words, that and their essential obsession is to keep Trump on board for Ukraine, even as he says, doesn't really interest me very much.
Well, everyone, I have some very bad news that none of these people seem to be remotely aware of. We're in the middle of March. This, the ending of the winter. This is the time, when you do it with a vengeance, is you start storing oil and gas for the next winter.
Right.
So this is the time when you're supposed to be doing it, and you're not. Okay. And this is completely open-ended. We have no idea how this escapade in Iran is going to end. What does it mean to end? We don't even
No,
know
no,
that.
no, we
Okay.
absolutely don't.
And meanwhile, you're not filling up your storage.
No, that's right. That's it. Um, and then here is the UK Foreign Secretary.
Oh God,
Quick quiz time. Who's the UK Foreign Secretary? I bet 95% of the public would fail that test.
it doesn't matter anymore.
It
Okay.
doesn't. Yvette Cooper is her name. Some people may have thought, oh, it's David Lammy. It's not David Lammy anymore.
What
It's
is he
Yvette.
doing now?
I think he's the leader of the House of Commons. I
Oh
think,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right.
and I think he's the deputy prime minister. Um, so
I guess that was, failing upward.
yes. UK Foreign Secretary accuses Russia and Iran of trying to hijack the global economy. And so she says he accused Russia and Iran of attempting to hijack the global economy. We have seen these links between Russia and Iran over an extended period of time in technology, approach, and tactics, she said during a visit to Saudi Arabia. These two states try to support each other and try to benefit from attempting to hijack the global economy. Well, it
Yeah,
might.
I wonder what their Saudi interlocutors are thinking when she's talking this way. Is that they're probably just looking at each other. Is she for real?
Well,
Is
that's
she?
right, and that's what that Saudi Arabia and the Gulf monarchies, they may not like Iran very much, but they would say, "We told you this would happen." I mean, we didn't think this was a great idea to launch this war. And what was the point of launching this war? We're all doing well. We're all making money. We're just making money hand over fist. And now you've done this. Why? Why did you do this? Um, And then here we have UK won't ease sanctions on Russian oil. So we won't do it. The UK will not loosen sanctions on Russian oil, a government minister says. And it says here, but Energy Minister Michael Shanks told BBC's Today program sanctions are important. He warned of the consequences of President Putin having an opportunity to invest more in the Ukraine war. The UK government will not be loosening sanctions on Russia at all. So that's the declaration. And now this was a meeting held the other day in the Kremlin by with Putin and the key figures in the Russian energy industry. And here says Putin says, I'd like to emphasize in this regard, under current conditions, competition among buyers for energy suppliers and for stable, predictable oil and gas supplies is intensifying. In this regard, of course, I cannot help but say and remind not only my colleagues sitting here in this hall, but also all our consumers in general, that Russian energy companies have always been distinguished by their stability. Seeing that, hey, there's a crisis in the world energy markets, this is a kind of an opportunity for Russia to do quite well. And so he says the shift in the balance of hydrocarbon supply and demand will, of course, lead to a new stable price reality. This is inevitable, so it's important for Russian energy companies to take advantage of the current situation, including by using additional export revenue to reduce their debt burden and outstanding debt to domestic banks. Dear colleagues, I would like to draw your particular attention to this. I ask the government and the central bank to oversee this process. Let me emphasize that Russia is, I repeat, a reliable energy supplier.
I'm sorry, George, but that the last few sentences of the previous slide, it really it's so telling to me. Um, Putin isn't saying how this is going to the advantage of Russia geopolitically. He's actually telling Russia, the major Russian oil companies, that you're kind of falling behind in some of your payments here. We'd like that, taken care of. Okay,
Yes,
and
no,
isn't it really amazing? They're not talking about we have to take this advantage now to push against the West, move ahead. No, none of that. None of it, very pragmatic,
okay.
okay, domestically driven,
Mm-hmm.
okay. It's so interesting to me
Okay.
compared to the bluster that we have from
Okay.
these nobodies.
Okay. No, that's a good point. Including using additional export revenue to reduce their debt burden and outstanding debt to domestic banks. So, this is your opportunity to rectify your your indebtedness. Let me emphasize that Russia is, I repeat, a reliable energy supplier. This has always been the case. We will certainly continue to supply oil and gas to countries that are themselves reliable partners. I'm referring not only to our partners in the Asia Pacific region, but also to countries in Eastern Europe, such as Slovakia and Hungary. Even now, some of our colleagues before this broad-based meeting have already informed me that we are increasing supplies to our reliable partners and in several regions at once. So Slovakia and Hungary, you're going to be okay. Not sure about everyone else, though. And then he says, at the same time, I would like to remind you that European Union countries plan to introduce additional restrictions on the purchase of Russian hydrocarbons, including LNG, starting April the 25th, up to and including a complete ban on such supplies in 2027. In this regard, the government has already been tasked with assessing the feasibility and advisability of halting our energy supplies to the European market.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yes. Rather than waiting for the door to be slammed in our faces, we must do so now, diverting these volumes from the European market to more attractive destinations, and most importantly, gaining a foothold there. So it's a little like I think you've pointed this out that the Russians are saying, look, if you don't want our oil and gas, no one's forcing you to take it. You're about to slam the door in our faces. Well, we're going to slam it before you. We're going to say, well, you don't want our oil and gas. We're going to shift it to more profitable
Yeah.
markets.
No, but we're gonna slam the door shut, and we have the key to the lock on our side. Okay.
Right, exactly. But we will look after Slovakia and Hungary because they were reliable partners of ours.
This
Uh,
it, this shows a lack of just geopolitical thinking on the part of the European Union. Okay, Trump isn't a reliable partner. There's a fissure in the Euro Atlantic relationship. We've heard this month after month after month. So what did you do to prepare for these kind of contingencies? You haven't done anything
right,
at all, except for virtue signaling and pounding your chest and
right,
these platitudes about democracy and freedom and
right,
all of this. What have you done to protect your citizens?
right.
They're going to get crushed by this.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
This is, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, September. When people start talking like that, you better be
Right.
terrified.
Yeah.
Because you know what it means? They don't have a plan.
No, no, no. But it also shows how ridiculous the leaders of Europe were. I mean, to assume that you can cut yourself off from Russian energy and everything is going to work out fantastically. In other words, you're banking on the Middle East stability, and this is a reliable source of energy. That's
Middle
that's your
East,
plan. That's what you're going to bank on.
Middle East stability
Yeah.
in the same sentence?
That's right. I mean, and then, can you imagine the utter mediocrity of this leadership, Kaya Kallas and von der Leyen? Well, we didn't think that this might happen in the Middle East. You didn't? I mean, where have you been for in the last few decades? That this is you're going to rely on that. You're going to cut yourself off from this Russian oil and gas, which has been extremely reliable for decades, going all the way back to the 1960s. And now you're going to rely on the Middle East. Whoops. I didn't think this was going to happen.
By the way, there was a war in June of last
Yeah.
year.
Right. Yeah. Um, And then he goes on, incidentally, I asked you to come here to consult on all these issues. If European companies and European buyers suddenly decide to reorient themselves and provide us with long-term sustainable cooperation, free from political pressures, then go ahead. We've never refused, and we're ready to work with Europeans too. But we need some signals from them that they're ready and willing to work with us and will ensure the sustainability and stability. I think there may be a long wait to get for these signals from the Europeans that they're prepared to become reliable and partners who will sign long-term sustainable contracts and will not just simply make all these arbitrary decisions based on the latest political crisis. That's it's a long time since they've done it. I think this is waiting for Kaya Kallas and von der Leyen to go back on everything that they've done. Yeah, we're ready for to sign long-term contracts.
Well, again, reality intervenes. You stop using these pipelines, and they're old, okay? And the Ukrainians have treated them very, very badly. But they're not, if you're not using them, they're just going to fall into disrepair.
Right, right.
And new pipelines, the power of Siberia, and there's a second one. I think they're thinking about a third one. Russia's reorienting all of its energy eastward and south. And, you know, a hiatus of a few years. I don't know. Will the pipelines work?
Right,
I
right,
mean, will there even be pipeline? Will they start dismantling them for metal scrap?
right,
Okay. I
right.
mean, you just can't turn around and say, "Well, we need to kind of, have a second thought." Well, no, you've already decided,
Yeah, no,
with your words and your actions, and the world moves on. You in the West have this fantasy about how the evil of fossil fuels. If you want to go green and you wind and all of this, that's your thing. But the rest of the world is moving on.
right.
The rest of the world wants to replicate what you did
Yep,
in the 20th century, where
right,
you have an industrial base and you have cheap Russian energy. That was a wonderful marriage for the
right.
prosperity of most Europeans, if
Yep,
not all Europeans. And
yeah,
the Indians and the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis and all the rest of them, well, they want to replicate that.
yep, yeah, yeah. No, that's right. Um, but it's going to be a very um, tall order for the European leaders anyway, to start rethinking any of this. And one has to say that the people who might have taken a more sensible position in Europe have really not been particularly sensible when it comes to Iran. And I mean the various kind of populist political parties in Europe from whom one might have expected something a little more sensible, but people like Nigel Farage has been gung ho for this. You would have thought Farage would say, "Well, we've got to put British national interests first, and yeah, we got to make sure that there is a stable supply of energy." Hasn't done it, and that's true of other populist movements in Europe. So we can't expect anything from von der Leyen on Kaya Kallas and so on. But it would be nice if there were at least alternative political movements in Europe that would take a more sensible policy both on the Middle East and towards Russia.
Yeah, I mean, the Overton window is like this.
Right,
The whole phrase Overton window is about it opening and expanding.
right,
The
right,
Europeans they have this remarkable ability to limit their options,
right.
to no options.
Yeah.
That's not how politics works.
No, no,
Okay,
no.
that is a rigid system that doesn't allow alternative inputs into thinking and resolving problems. They're incapable of considering resolving their problems. Everything's all nice and fine,
No,
you know?
no, no, that's right. And I think, we talked about this before, but given where the modern economy is heading, for instance, towards AI, which is extremely
Energy.
energy consumptive, you need lots and lots of fossil fuels. Wind and the sun, they're not going to do it, particularly as Europe doesn't really have a lot of wind or a lot of sun. So you need fossil fuels. That probably wasn't a great idea to cut yourself off from Russian oil and gas. Uh,
Now,
yeah, and now relying on the Middle East, where you got the Strait of Hormuz, which is closed. That's 20% of the world's oil that goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So it doesn't look as if the leaders of the EU have done their advanced planning.
well, it's been mentioned in the U.S. about conscription.
Hmm.
Well, shouldn't that tell you they don't have a plan? I mean, my goodness. And Well, if there's nobody in Tehran to surrender, according to Donald Trump, then who controls the Straits of Hormuz? You don't want to talk to anyone? You're
Yeah.
going to invade it? You really take a look at a topographical map. Where are you going to invade?
Right,
Which
right.
mountain range are you
No,
going to
that's right. I mean,
go
there,
over?
but even something more limited, such as seizing Carg Island, that's a major operation. That's not an easy task. Very casualty rich operation. It's got the Americans are going to lose many lives doing something like that. So no, that doesn't look very feasible. But I think if they are planning an escalation, through ground invasion, they are absolutely going to rope in the Europeans. The Americans are not just going to do it by themselves. They're absolutely going to start applying pressure against Starmer, against Schmerz, and the rest, and say, hey, if you want help from us on Ukraine, you want us to continue with NATO, you got to get in on this operation, because otherwise, you know, everything is just going to go belly up.
Well, George, this is a very interesting strategy. The U.S. right now in Israel, they want to rely upon air power, if it's drones or missiles or
Right.
planes and all of that. Okay, do you want to go up the escalation ladder with troops? Okay, so the Iranians will be watching this and say, well, come on,
Right.
come on in, come on in. You're adverse to losses? We'll teach you what losses are. We're experiencing losses every time you bomb our cities.
Right.
Okay, so if you want to come in, you're
Yep.
more than welcome. This is Gallipoli.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. I agree.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I mean, then considering what I said earlier about how people think politically and electorally when it comes to wars, no, massive body bag. Yes, that does change the calculus.
Yes.
Okay,
I
because
agree.
you're going to have $8 a gallon
You got
gasoline and you're going to have body bags.
you got
Okay.
body bags on a war that is already unpopular. So it's not like there was at any time, as there are in some cases, a war is popular, at least in its early days. This war was never popular in the early days. So once you start having body bags, then it becomes really unpopular. So remember, I mean, Vietnam was quite popular for some time. Then it became unpopular. Even
Yeah,
George W. Bush's
George,
war in Iraq was also popular for some time before it became unpopular. But this was unpopular to begin with.
I don't remember the numbers now. It's been a long time ago. But for a significant segment of the American population, it was always worth it in Vietnam.
Yeah,
This is this myth,
right.
everybody turned again.
No, no,
No,
no,
no, no, that's not
no,
true.
no.
That's not true. My father's generation, they were gung ho for it, okay? And they were until the very end. And
That's right. They went
and
to the
there's
end.
ones that say, no, well, we were in WW2 we had the support. We had the bombs, we had the ships, we were never sold short. Our guys in Vietnam were sold short. I'm just giving their mythology, okay? But this whole thing about, suddenly people, no, it was young people that were against it, okay? The Democratic Party used it as a cudgel. It's a far more complicated
No,
thing. And, but the point is what George just said. From the get-go, this is unpopular. Okay?
exactly. That's right. So when it's already unpopular, then
There's only one way to
and then,
go.
and then you got exactly, and then you got the body bags. Then that's you got a real problem. And then when people say, the argument that what he called what was it Trump called them, deranged
Scumbags.
scumbags, yeah, deranged scumbags, that isn't working. You just the public just doesn't hate the Ayatollahs. I mean, that's the Israel lobby, the fanatics in the Israel lobbies. Yeah, they hate Iran, but the public doesn't. You can't get them excited about things that happened 47 years ago. I mean, it's just common sense. I
And
mean, that happened 47 years ago. No one's going to get very excited about it now.
and there is a growing segment of the American population, and you could throw in the West in general. They just saw what Israel did to Gaza.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. I mean, that's fresh in everyone's memory. And I don't know if you saw the clip, and I think this one was real. Joe Biden was flying commercial. Obviously he had his handlers and Secret Service with him, but people were, I don't know if they were getting on the plane or getting off the plane, and there was a number of people that went right up to Biden and said their children still dying in Gaza. Okay, that's what he's going to be remembered for.
Right.
Okay, and so there's there's and there's all this talk of a false flag. I don't know if you saw in California, there was some kind of drone alert and all
Yeah.
of that.
Right.
It's very interesting that the White House informed the affiliate
Right.
at ABC News, stop doing that.
Right.
Okay? Because it's not going to rally Americans around the flag and you say, look what you did. You attacked this country and now they're going after us. We don't have anything to do with this. You never told us anything about it. There was no selling of this war. And
Yeah.
now we have to worry about drones from a country that's all the way around the world.
No,
See,
no,
it'll have the negative impact.
yeah. No, that's right. Well, anyway, that was day 14, and it's not it doesn't look like it's coming to an end anytime soon.
Well,
So,
I think, George, what I see here is just such a divergence of how people see this
right,
conflict. I mean, Donald Trump, you are making
right.
a cascade number of errors
Yes,
here.
right,
We have one where we're waiting for them to surrender. This is
right,
not,
right.
this is not the way to sell this war.
No,
Okay. Oh, it's not even a war.
right.
Oh, God.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's right.
All righty.
Yeah,
You know what we're going to talk about on Sunday. Okay.
exactly.
All right, everybody. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Spring is upon us. The
Well,
snow is
soon,
melting, the
yes.
sun is shining, and all the more good reason to fill up the tip jar.
Exactly, and that's kind of what Buddy was saying is that, well, this was a grim winter, and it was a grim tip jar, and now that spring is here, he wants to see more tip jar action.
He's
No,
still
there's no
asleep.
excuse for the cold weather, and
He's still
Apple is
asleep.
Apple is kind of, I mean,
He's
if he actually woke up occasionally.
he's still asleep. He doesn't.
So we're very, very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology. Um, um, and above all, we'll have an easier time, maybe in the spring, with the dogs. They might be in a better frame of mind. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.